Good day everyone, I am Claramic Vevas and I will be discussing lesson 12, which is collective bargaining and labor relations. In this lesson, I will discuss the labor labor relations goals of the management, labor unions, and the major labor management interactions such as organizing, contract negotiation, and contract administration. So in the book Industrial Relations System, John Dunlop suggested that to have a good or a successful industrial relation system, it must consist these four elements. First element will be the environmental context. These are the market pressures, legal framework, and technology. These are the factors that affects the business operations. The second element will be the participants. Participant is These are the group of people who are involved in the negotiation process. These are the management, the employees, and the labor union they belong to, and lastly, the government. So the role of the management and the labor union here is quite obvious. Most probably, um, they will have a negotiation regarding the terms and conditions of in the contracts of the employees. So what is the role of the government here? Government will, will be the one who will arbitrate any disputes between these two parties. So the third element will be the web of rules or rules of the game. These are the processes by which the labor and the management interacts in order to resolve any disagreements or disputes. An example of this would be the grievance procedure, which will be discussed later on. So for the fourth and last element, this will be the ideology. Ideology refers to the acceptance of the roles of each participant. However, acceptance doesn't mean that they won't be experiencing any problems or conflicts in the future. This is because each participant have their own interest to fulfill, and most probably that these interests are or will be asserted during the negotiation process. An example for this will be the profit sharing between the investors and the employees. So, what is the conflict in this type of situation? The invents the labor union might if they think that that the employees deserve a higher salary, of course they will try to demand or will demand to the business uh, to the management of the business to increase the pay of their employees. But of course the management would want to keep the um, amount of amount of money that they expected to get. So the management have the option to encourage or discourage the unionization of these of their employees. So of course the management would want to discourage these types of activities because it can this unionization can cause disruptions on their operations, and it can also cause constraints on their decision making flexibility. So historically there are two basic strategies um, to avoid that the management do in order to avoid unionization. First is to provide employment terms and conditions that employees will perceive as sufficiently attractive and equitable. And the second one will be the aggressively oppose union representation even where there is significant employee interests. So between these two, most commonly followed strategy is the second one. This is because the management want to um, would always want to decrease or maintain a lower cost. And if they chose to follow the number one, the first strategy, which is to provide employee terms and conditions that is attractive for their employees, of course this will mean that they will have a high cost. So what are the things that will will be seen as a attractive and equitable for employees? Of course, a high salary, and the management would not want to do that. And also, if the management acknowledge the presence of the labor union in their organization, or if there is already an existence there of labor union, they will have to shift their focus on dealing with an employee as an individual to a group of to a group of people. So let's define labor union first. Labor union are the group of people who seek to give workers a formal and independent voice in setting the terms and conditions of their work. So this group are not just concerned with the compensation and benefits of the employees, but also to the overall implementation of the legislated labor protocols such as health, safety, and overtime regulations. That's why it was said that without these groups, the um, the employees' welfare will more is more likely to be at risk, especially to those low wage economies where there might be a lack of um, regulatory protocols. So next is National Labor Relations Commission, or NLRC. This is a subsequent part of DOLE, or Department of Labor and Employment. This agency is responsible for promoting and maintaining industrial peace by resolving labor and management conflicts, and involving local and overseas workers through compulsory arbitration and alternative modes of dispute resolution. So in short, this this is the agency where the labor unions and the management go to resolve their conflicts if they cannot resolve it on their own. So next is the rules of procedures. These are the set of rules given by the Labor Code of the Philippines to NLRC in handling their cases. So for the rule number 1, it consists of the title construction. It signifies the title and the governing rules. In rule number 2, this is the definition of terms. This states that the legal terms that are used in the Labor Code of the Philippines will be given the same meaning when used by NLRC during their handling of cases. So in rule number 3, pleadings, notices, and appearances, these states that all parties involved should be given prior notice and all impending proceedings. So for rule number 4, it is the venue, assignment, and disposition of cases. These states that all cases should be given to the regional arbitration branch that has jurisdiction over the workplace, and except for those cases that has justifiable reason, such as safety issues. So number 5, proceedings before labor arbiters. This states that the only labor arbiters should be allowed to hear and decide for these cases concerning labor issues. So for rule number 6, appeals. This after the So for rule number 6, which is appeals, after a decision has been made by the court, this rule states when and where they can file an appeal. For rule number 7, proceedings before the commission, this states that all proceedings must be towards a decision or further motion of reconsideration. For rule number 8, which is the execution proceedings, this states all the rules to be followed by all the involved parties and after the decision have been made. And also, this also states the how the winning party can claim the damages incurred. So for rule number 9, certified cases, this signifies that all decisions made are considered final unless appeals has been made. For rule number 10, which is contempt, this states that a penalty will be given to those who will commit misbehavior in the presence of the labor arbiter. For rule number 11, which is the injunction, this illustrates the injunctions that may take place during a labor case. Injunctions are the orders made by the court, such as ocular inspection and restraining orders. So for rule number 12, which is the commission seal and records and powers and duties of commission officials, this rule illustrates the notices to be given, and how it also states how they can access the archives or the records from the past cases. And also this states the duties of all the employees and officials of NLRC. And for the last rule, which is rule number 13, it is the effectivity. This rule states that starting September 15, 1990, all of these 13 rules should be implemented and followed by NLRC. Next slide is local unions. This is where the negotiation of contract and day-to-day interactions between the labor and management happens. Local unions are usually represented by their elected officials, but sometimes they form a committee, a bargaining committee to represent their group. Local unions are typically given support by national unions by giving them background data and giving them technical advices, which they can use during the negotiation process. There are two types of local unions. First is the local of an industrial-based union. This industrial-based union may correspond to a single large facility or to a number of small facilities. This means that their members may consist of employees from different companies or businesses, while the craft-oriented union are the local union that may cover a city or a region. And usually this type of union they are the one who train their members, and when an employer needs their services, they will go directly to this labor union to have negotiation regarding the work and the contract of their members. Next slide is the union membership and bargaining power. This states the management and unions meet head-on over the issue of union organizing. So this topic states that the management actively resists the forming of or unionization of their employees. This is to maintain their decision making flexibility and reduce their cost, while the labor unions needs to increase their number for them to have a bargaining power. So what is bargaining power? Bargaining power is the um, is the capability of one party to influence another. So, for example, the labor union have enough number of people to have a strong bargaining power towards the management. And if ever they demanded that they want to have an increase in their salary, um, and if the management uh, won't give them that, they can hold it as a strike, or even stop the production by not going to work. And this will pressure the management to give in, or to have a negotiation with them with regards to their salaries. And also, an increase in their members will an increase in the number of their members will give them financial resources which are needed for them to attain their goals. So next is structural changes in the economy. This topic states that the employees who are usually involved with the labor unions are those who are from blue-collar jobs, or those jobs that are considered as manual labor. But however, the recent job growth occurred in women and youth in service sectors, and these service sectors are usually private entities that which were in labor union do not have much success in organizing. But even with this situation, no more than 1/4 of the overall union membership declined. For the next slide, it will be the increased employer resistance. It is the product market pressures such as foreign competition and regulation have contributed to increasing employer resistance to unions. So before, management sees labor union as a tool to that could help them assess and communicate the interest of employees to management, which will help them to make better decisions. However, due to the increasing number of competition, management just um, could not just give the demands of their employees. That's why today they actively resist the forming of these groups inside their companies. So next is associate union membership. Associate union membership. This program allows non-union workers to be part of their union movement. Also, the difference between this associate union membership and the union membership is that these as those who are um those who are considered as associate union members, they are only they only receive dues in exchange for services such as health insurance, but the labor union will not provide any representation for them in collective bargaining. And next will be the corporate campaigns. These are the union activities designed to exert public financial or political pressure in employers during the union organizing processes. These activities can include mass literature distribution, door-to-door canvassing, So next is the corporate campaigns. These are the union activities designed to exert public, financial, and political pressure on employers during the union organizing process. Next is corporate campaigns. These are the union activities designed to exert public, financial, or political pressure on employers during the union organizing process. So, um, this corporate campaign is a strategic effort by a union to put pressure on a company to unionize employees by damaging the company's reputation and relationship with their customers, and other stakeholders. These activities can include mass literature distribution, door-to-door canvassing, demonstrations and rallies, shareholder protests, campaigning for the general public to boycott their product and services. So the next topic will be contract negotiation. So the negotiation process, the labor management negotiations could be broken into 4 sub-processes. So for the first sub-process, we have distributive bargaining. It focuses on dividing a economic pie into two sides, and this is a win-lose situation. For example, the employees demanded for a higher wage or salary, then in that kind, if that is granted, um, the employees gets a larger share, and while the management will have the remaining or the smaller shares. So for the second sub process is the integrative bargaining. This is a win-win situation since this seeks solution that is beneficial for both parties. For example, the management want to reduce their costs, and in order to achieve this goal without laying off any employees, they will have to have an agreement with the labor unions or employees to make some changes in their work conditions or work rules that can enhance productivity. So the third sub-process, the attitudinal structuring, this refers to the relationship between the management and the labor. That's why it is important to the both parties to keep their end of the bargain, because if one of them fail to do so, the other party might have some hesitance when dealing with them in the future. This the relationship between them will have a huge impact or effect on their future negotiation. So for the fourth and last, inter-organizational bargaining, this refers to the internal relations or conflicts inside each party. So for example, in a labor union, those who are considered as high seniority workers will most likely to accept a contract that has layoffs, because considering that they are considered as the seniors in their work, they will have lesser chance to be laid off, while the um, less senior workers have have will probably be hesitant to accept that contract, since they are they will their job will be at risk. That's why the negotiators of the labor unions should come up with solutions that will fulfill the interest of all of their constituents. Also in management, so a management is also consists of a number of people which have their own thinking, and some of them might focus on long-term employee relations, while some will focus on cost control, and some will focus on the effect of the contract that the contract will have on the stakeholders. Management's preparation for negotiations. These are the steps to be taken by the management in preparing in negotiating with the labor union. So first step is to establish interdepartmental contract objectives. This means that the industrial relations department must needs to meet with the different departments such as marketing, finance, accounting, and production to set contract goals that will be beneficial for all the departments. And also, um, the bargaining committee of the labor union should be constructed to take these various interests into account. Second step would be reviewing the old contract. This is the in this step they will identify the provisions of the contract that might cause difficulties for both parties and try to amend it for them to have for the contract to be beneficial for both of them. The third step will be the preparing and analyzing data. This is the preparation of the information on labor costs and the productivity of the competitors, as well as the data of the union may emphasize the need to be prepared and analyzed. Also, data on employee demographics and the seniority are relevant for establishing the costs of such benefits since these employees are bound to have benefits such as pensions, health insurance, and paid vacations. The questions that the management need to answer in this step are how long will its inventory allow it to keep meeting customers' orders. The second one is to what extent are other companies positioned to step in and offer replacement products. And lastly, how difficult would it be to find replacement workers if the company decided to continue operations during a strike? For the fourth step, it's the anticipating union demands. This is the management becoming aware of the things that the union or labor union might demand from the company during the negotiation process. And by becoming aware of settlements of other companies, reviewing grievances over the previous contracts, and discussing with union leaders, they can anticipate what are the things that are most likely to be asked by the union. And by doing so, they can develop potential counter proposals. So for the fifth step is the establishing the cost of possible contract provisions. This step needs the management to review the wage or and benefit of in the contract because these things increases over time and might only seem manageable in the first year of the contract. So next is preparing for a strike. If the management intends to operate during a strike, they need to line up replacement workers, increase its security, and figure out how to deal with the incidents on the picket line and elsewhere. And while if the management does not intend to continue its operation during a strike, they will need to alert to the suppliers and customers and consider possible ways to avoid the loss of their business. So this step will be the plan of the management during a strike. For the seventh and last step is determining strategy and logistics. In this step, the management have to answer the questions such as what concessions can it make on its own each and which ones require it to check it with the top management. Second is the on which issues can it compromise and on which can it not. And lastly, and the decisions with regards to the meeting places and times must also be made. So next, management's willingness to take a strike comes down to two questions. First is can the company remain profitable over the long run if it agrees to the union's demands? The answer here is more likely to be yes, since the cost can be passed on to the consumers without losing the business, especially to those enterprises that belong to the industries that have low price competition. And also, unions share part of the management's concern with the long-term competitiveness, because a decline in competitiveness can cause massive job loss. So for the second question, can the company continue to operate in the short run despite a strike? The management will most likely to be hanging tough, or won't give in to the demands of their employees or the labor union, because they think that they consider that the loss of profit and revenues from their, because of because of the disruption of their production and operations, is will just be short-run concern, since this event can cause the strikers a loss of wages and possibly a permanent loss of jobs. So these are the factors that the management must consider for them to know if they can afford a strike. First is the product demand. If the product demand is strong, the management cannot afford a strike, because they will lose a huge amount of profit and revenue. So the next factor to be considered is the product perishability. If a business is directly related to the workers who are responsible for providing perishable goods, like farmers and also those who delivers it, the management could not afford a strike, because this will result to a massive loss in their revenue and their profit, which will increase the cost for the management. So for the third factor is technology. If the company is using tech advanced technologies, such as for example AIs or the artificial intelligence, they were most likely will not be that affected if a strike happens, since their employees can be replaced by these technologies. For the fourth factor is the availability of replacement workers. The operations of a business won't be that affected if they have available workers who are ready to replace those who are striking against the company. For the fifth factor, multiple production sites and staggered contracts. This means that um, the management can have multiple sites of production that have different timelines of contracts or end of contracts, for them to prevent the strikes, the unionized strikes of the employees from these different production sites. So next is the integrated facilities. If the facilities of a business is connected to each other, um, or they have the just-in-time production system, the management will most probably cannot take a strike, since this will disrupt all of their operations. So 7, lack of substitutes for product. If the products of the management is easily replaceable or have alternatives in the market, they most likely cannot take a strike, since these strikes will really cost them in the long run. Next topic will be contract administration. For the first step, the employee may discuss his or her grievances or problems with the supervisor, and or the employee can go with a labor union representative to talk with the supervisor. And next would be the union representative and the employee will decide whether the issue has been resolved, and if not, they will have to identify which part of the contract has been violated. The second step, if there is still issues between the labor and the management, they can put the grievances in writing and submit it to the production superintendent or other designated line manager, and the union representative and management will have to discuss this this issue or grievance, and also the management response will also be put into writing. Also, a member of Industrial Relations Department can be consulted during the stage. So for the third step, the grievances will be appealed to the top line management, and industrial relations staff, representatives, and they may be an additional local or international union representatives or officers to be involved in discussions. Decisions in these um, decisions to be made here will be put in writing. So for the step number 4, the union will decide whether to um, file a case in arbitration to resolve this issue. Discharge grievances can occur during or may begin during the step 2 or step 3, and the time limits between these steps may be shorter um, to make the process a lot faster. And the union or group grievances, this refers to the um, initiation of the union representative or in representing the employees. This can take place during the step 1 or step 2. So arbitration, this is a procedure for resolving collective bargaining impasses by which an arbitrator chooses a solution to the dispute. So arbitration usually takes place in trial courts, and there they will have to come up with a solution to clear the issues or problems between the labor and the management. Also, the arbitrator or the arbitration board can can come up with a solution or choose between the management and the union's final offer. So these are the questions that are needed to be answered during arbitration. First is, did the employee know what the rule or expectation was and what the consequences not adhering to it were? And the second one was the rule applied in a consistent and predictable way, or all all employees treated the same? So for the third question, are facts collected in a fair and systematic manner? This is important part of the arbitration, since all the things that were being said during arbitration or the trial will be recorded and uh, should be carefully documented. So for the fourth question, does the employee have the right to question the facts and present a defense? And fifth, does the employee have the right to appeal a decision? Example of this is a recourse to an impartial third party, such as an arbitrator. So for number 6, is there a progressive discipline? And lastly, are there unique mitigating circumstances? All of these questions may need to be considered during arbitration trial. In cooperative labor management strategies, Jack Barbas described the relationship between labor and management as love-hate and cooperation-conflict relationship. This is because the management and the labor have the same goal, and this is to bring success to the business. But because of their own interests, issues and conflicts have arises over time, such as issues on work, work conditions or work rules and profit sharing. So next is the labor relations outcomes, or these are the things that might happen if the labor issues between the labor unions and the management won't be resolved. First is strikes. This is the work stoppage of that the employee will do in order to put pressure on the management. So for productivity, so there are three ways that a labor union can decrease the productivity of an enterprise. First is the union pay advantage causes employers to use less labor and more capital per worker than they would. This refers to the amount that the labor union will um, will be demanding from the employers, and if the and for example, per per the construction workers pay for per day, for example, is 500 pesos, but then the labor union will demand that they should be given at least 580 pesos per day, and if not, they won't be giving them any services. And if ever the management do not have any other choices besides them, the management might agree to this setup. Um, However, this kind of setup will not be efficient for the company, since the budget is allocated, and if the higher the amount that each employee demands, then this will result to a lesser number of workers to be employed. So second is the union contract provisions may limit permissible workloads, restrict the tasks and the particular workers are allowed to perform, and require employers to use more employees for certain jobs than they otherwise would. The third one is strikes, slowdowns, and working to rule. Working to rule means slowing down production by following every workplace rule to an extreme. These factors can result to loss of production, since the employees are the one who facilitate and do all the works for the businesses to provide the products and services. So last is the profit and stock performance. It is stated here the effects of the labor union demands on the profit stock and the stocks of a company or a business. For example, a labor union demanded a higher amount of wage to be given to the employees, and in return, they ensured that there will be a higher rate of productivity. But even if the employees increase their productivity rate, the stock performance and the profit of the company will still suffer, since um the amount of the wages of all of the employees will be incurred in their costs. So this is where my presentation ends. Thank you for listening.